Good evening, you're watching The Buck Stops Here and I'm Barkha Dutt. On the program tonight, we look at whether the India-Pakistan equation is at another tipping point. This after horrific details emerge of the mutilation of the bodies of two Indian soldiers at the line of control. India calls the mutilations barbaric and inhuman. In fact, in a very strong statement, India says that Pakistan has crossed not just the line of control, but the line of civility. India is describing the mutilations to be ghastly, inhuman, unacceptable. India is asking Pakistan to probe what it's calling the barbaric act and killings. Pakistan says it's ready for a probe, provided it's within the ambit of the United Nations. The BJP is putting pressure on the government. It's saying, forget SHARM-EL-SHEIKH, change your Pakistan policy. We're asking tonight whether this is another tipping point for India-Pakistan relations. This on a day when the bodies of the two soldiers, Lance Naik Hemraj and Sudhakar Singh, have reached their families. As we said, the bodies have been mutilated. One body has been decapitated. Its head is still missing. The other body has also been mutilated. Tributes are pouring in. There has been a gun salute with their compatriots and their families offering tributes to Hemraj and Sudhakar.
Lance Naik Sudhakar Singh was just 19 when he joined the Indian Army. His father heard of his death on television. A devastated father remembers his 30-year-old son, telling us how Sudhakar always told him that death was not worth fearing.
आप भयभीत मत होइए, मृत्यु तो हर जगह है। और हम आपसे क्या तकलीफ अपना व्यक्त करें, उसको हम अपना जीवन का आधार बोलते थे।
In his last letter to his father, he wrote about missing his family and wanting to visit soon. Now his wife and his 4-month-old baby wait for his coffin.
In Sudhakar's death, this village has lost a dutiful son, a man who was not only loved by his family and friends, but admired and respected by his entire village for his valor and courage.
A village mourning its son. 32-year-old Lance Naik Hemraj Singh was the first in his family of farmers to join the army.
मैंने साहब वहाँ पे 2-3 लड़ाइयाँ लड़ी भी हैं, ऐसी कोई बात नहीं है। इस तरीके से जो उन्होंने किया है, ये उन्होंने बिल्कुल गलत किया है। हम अगर वहाँ होते तो वक्त पे बताते, अभी यहाँ हैं तो हम क्या कहें, कुछ नहीं।
A brave jawan and a loving father, survived by 3 children, the eldest 7 and the youngest just 3. Hemraj was hoping to buy a small house near Kosi so his children could have access to better schools.
ऐसे रहेंगे तो जवान ऐसा हो सकता है कि जो गरीब हैं, किसान हैं, मजदूर हैं, अपने जवान सीमा पर नहीं भेजेंगे.
This is a village which has sent 15 of its men to the Indian Army, but they say that this was a cowardly attack on one of their own. Today, all that they can do is stand in silence with the family in their deepest and darkest hour.
With Anand Zanane and Siddharth Pandey, Amitabh Brevi, NDTV.
And soldiers too often become just statistics. We forget their human tragedy. The fact that Lance Naik Sudhakar Singh is survived by a baby who was just 4 months old, or that Lance Naik Hemraj Singh died when he was just 32 and leaves behind a family with not just a wife but 3 small children, the eldest of whom was just 7 years old. Soldiers do often die in the line of duty. There have been ceasefire violations before. But mutilation, and that's what makes this issue so grave, mutilation changes the moral compass of the debate, because mutilation and brutalization actually goes against the rules of war. Now, this has, of course, inevitably increased the pressure on the government. The BJP is stepping up pressure, saying that public opinion is asking and demanding that the Manmohan Singh government review its Pakistan policy. Earlier, Speaking to me, Arun Jaitley on the buck stops here said if he were in government, he would immediately review the level of engagement between India and Pakistan. Mr. Jaitley, you have seen two sets of reactions. One, the formal response of India saying this is barbaric, this is inhuman, this is unacceptable. And now a response coming in from Pakistan expressing a readiness for a probe, but one conducted within the ambit of the United Nations. I imagine this would not be acceptable to India.
Well, obviously this will not be acceptable to India, and rightly so. It should never be acceptable to India. You see, Pakistan has made a habit out of living in denial. Every time incidents of cross-border terrorism used to take place, Pakistan in the first instance would deny it. It even denied its involvement in 26/11. And when it was established by overwhelming evidence, despite its non-cooperation, it said, well, there was non-state actors doing it. The burden was conveniently passed on to non-state actors. The burden of their song was, we ourselves are a victim of terror, and it's non-state actors who attack us who are also conducting these attacks in India. But this one is an exception. There is no non-state actor involved in this. This is an act of the Pakistani army. It's an act of an instrumentality of the Pakistani state. They've encroached into Indian territory. There is an unprovoked act of aggression against Indian soldiers. With brutality, almost in a beastly manner, they have mutilated the bodies of Indian jawans and therefore soured the entire environment which was otherwise being developed between the two countries. And therefore, the reaction as far as Pakistan is concerned, it is on expected lines, but I am extremely disappointed. It's a reaction which we have to reject. And as far as Indian reaction is concerned, I must say that this would be taken to, or should be taken to its logical conclusion. It must go beyond empty words.
When you say that it must go beyond empty words and that in a sense a red line has been crossed because even war has its rules and soldiers have their code, and when we have mutilation happening, it breaks all rules of engagement, even the rules of conflict, what are the options that could go beyond the rhetoric of calling this unacceptable?
Well, since red lines have been broken, India will have to draw its own set of red lines. In these own set of red lines, India will have to keep all options open. Now, do you go to an extreme reaction of suspending your dialogue with Pakistan and all communications with Pakistan? Do you pause it? Do you slow it down? Do you register your protest? I think it will all depend on the quantum of evidence which we are able to collect and place before the international community. Needless to say, it's almost certain India couldn't have engineered these killings itself. The fact that Indian soldiers have been attacked and mutilated in this manner, and the first reaction with some material of the Indian army, which we have good reason to believe, is that Pakistani army is responsible for this. I think as the situation progresses, you will have to draw your own set of red lines. Pakistan has breached the trust which we have been trying to build up for the last few years. We must now realize that that spirit of SHARM-EL-SHEIKH can never be the spirit in dealing with Pakistan, and therefore all options must be kept open, and we must watch the reaction of Pakistan to the evidence which India would eventually collect and present before the international community.
Mr. Jaitley, there seems to be a division within this government on what a Pakistan policy should be. There are suggestions that the Prime Minister in some ways has remained fixated on what's called his Pakistan project, that there are other naysayers within his government. There is, of course, now the pressure and the very strong pressure of public opinion, of public anger, of public anguish. On the other hand, there are also those who are realists who say that, that since war is not an option, what can a country do but to keep talking, complain when something like this happens and just keep talking? Do you accept that latter logic at all, or do you believe that the time has come to review what has come to be an uninterrupted dialogue process, which is what the Sharm-El-Sheikh joint statement said, but then India disassociated itself from that commitment, but in effect that is what is happening?
Well, we can't continue to live in an environment where we propagate this gush-gush diplomacy and will never deviate from it, irrespective of the fact that we regard war not to be an option for India, but every rule of that war is broken by Pakistan. I am not for a moment a warmonger or advocating anything of that effect, but at the same time, the level of dialogue with Pakistan, the pace at which it is to be carried on, the pauses, the halts, all these are options which are not to be stated in advance, but these are all options which are available in any sensible diplomacy to a country. And if Pakistan chooses to conduct its relationship with India in this manner, then I am sure the government of India will have to keep all options in mind.
Has the opposition been in touch with the government? Have you conveyed your sentiments to them?
Well, I am given to understand, I have not spoken to her directly, but my colleague Sushma ji has perhaps spoken. That was what I was just conveyed to me. I'll have to confirm this to somebody in the government. But that apart, our sentiments are very clear. We share the sentiment of the whole country. And the sentiment of the whole country is one of pain, one of anguish. There's a huge amount of anger as far as India is concerned, which can determine the level of engagement and the kind of engagement that we need to have with Pakistan.
Mr. Jaitley, in many ways, there is a shadow that hangs over us since 1999 and the Kargil conflict. And when you hear the father of Captain Saurabh Kalia, whose body returned home to us in an extremely, unspeakably mutilated condition at that time, you now have his father going to the court saying, let's take this to the International Court of Justice. India has been wary of doing this, both under your government and the Congress government, for not wanting to internationalize what we consider to be a bilateral dispute. But when you see the pain of human beings like Captain Kalia's father, the families of Lance Naik Hemraj and Lance Naik Sudhakar Singh today as they receive one body without a head and another body in a mutilated condition, do you believe it's time for India to look at an international forum like the International Court of Justice?
Well, I think it's a conscious strategy which the government of India will have to determine, keeping all factors in mind. Whether you internationalize it by going to the International Court of Justice at this stage or at a later stage is an option which the government of India must keep itself available to. But at the same time, placing all these facts with hard evidence before the international community is extremely important. One important pressure on Pakistan is that Pakistan is named and shamed for these kind of acts. You mentioned 1999. It was Kargil. There have been repeated acts of terror, the attack on Indian Parliament, the attack on the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly, several acts of cross-border terrorism, 26/11 in Mumbai, and now you have this invasion virtually into Indian territory where Indian soldiers are mutilated in this manner. These are no small acts. And therefore, the government of India, the Indian state as such, will have to take a very conscious and a strict view of this. We can't keep compromising with our sovereignty with these kind of attacks and invasions repeatedly.
When you say name and shame those responsible, what do you believe that in a sense campaign, what shape should it take? Because even in the past, and you know this, you've been in government, you're a senior leader of the opposition, international pressure has been brought on Pakistan. It was brought on Pakistan in 99 during the Kargil war. It was brought on Pakistan after 26/11. But America and Pakistan are locked into their own, some say utilitarian, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours equation.
Details of who were guarding these areas as far as Pakistan was concerned, who the likely suspects within the Pakistani army were. And since these were not non-state actors, these were state actors, I think the details of this have not only to be placed before Pakistan, they have to be placed before the international community.
Are you satisfied with the response you've heard from the government so far? Not wanting to politicize, as you said, something that the entire country is angry and upset over, but are you satisfied with their response?
Well, I would be more satisfied with government response if the government realizes that this is no time for the spirit of SHARM-EL-SHEIKH when these kind of incidents take place. This is a time where the government of India must keep all options open, draw its red lines, because Pakistan has indulged in an act which breaches the trust which was being built up between the two countries. This conduct of Pakistan is an abject warning to India. And the warning is you continue to negotiate, you continue to advocate engagement, you continue to advocate peace, but Pakistan as a state with its own style of functioning and its own compulsions could indulge in acts of this kind. So the government of India will have to keep all options open. It need not necessarily announce those options at this stage, but they must be in the back of the mind of those who plan Indian democracy, Indian diplomacy.
One last question. Till last week, we were watching India-Pakistan cricket. That was the environment. There was a visa agreement that has been recently signed to make people-to-people travel easier. There has been economic trade which has seen some sort of progress. Do you believe that it is time to review some of these measures that were essentially seen to be about a free exchange of people? Or do we keep the people separate and the state-to-state equation separate?
Well, we were building all these as confidence building measures so that the relationship between the two countries becomes as normal as possible. But what Pakistan is doing is just not cricket. This is no ordinary act of brutality, mutilating soldiers in this manner. And I am sure the government of India will also be conscious of the fact that it has completely soured the environment which was being built up after events of the recent past. And therefore, it's likely to have its impact on how these events unfold themselves in the months to come.
Absolutely. In fact, the Pakistan regiment has been named. Those are the level of details that are now available in the public domain. And ceasefires, Mr. Jaitley, usually manifest themselves with an exchange of fire. This time, it has actually been an infiltration of Indian territory and then, of course, the mutilation. If you were in government, Mr. Jaitley, what would you do at this point?
Well, if we were in government, we'll certainly review the level of engagement and the pace of engagement with Pakistan.